Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinsler, a lifelong gardener and the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Well, March is here.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for spring to get a little bit warmer. But it's going to put us in the spring mood today, talking about St. Patrick's Day.
Right. I mean, we here we are. We had a couple of 50-degree days, basically. Melted almost all of the snow, in certain parts. So we're seeing the green of grass that lasted through winter. So yeah, it's a great time. And here we are. We're ready for St. Patrick's Day coming up. So yeah, we thought it'd be a fun time to talk about that. And
are you Irish?
I am. I'm about half Irish. My dad's side is almost all Irish, and my mother's side is mostly Scandinavian. So the two come together like that. Yeah, the two come together over boiled potatoes. Let's say like that.
Exactly. Now I don't think I have any Irish in me.
Kinsler sounds pretty German.
Pretty German, sure. But we share potatoes.
Yes,
we share our love for potatoes and cabbage, and so it's going to be fun to kind of talk about some of these things. But, as they always say on St. Patrick's Day, everyone's a little bit Irish.
Right.
Now, our parish priest, as I was growing up in Lisbon, our parish priest was from Ireland.
Okay.
Old Monsignor O'Donoghue. And so I think maybe that qualifies me for being a little Irish too. He instilled it into us very well.
I like
he
to
had
think
a wonderful accent.
I like to think that the people who aren't Irish can still appreciate the Irish for all their various charms, accents, music, literature, and the landscapes too. But St. Patrick's Day is one of those. It's become more and more. Yeah, in theory, it's about Ireland, but really, it's an excuse to have a party.
It
seems to be a holiday to celebrate just anything, really. So
exactly,
not a bad thing.
Fun holiday to celebrate.
And I don't think it's anywhere near as big in Ireland as it is here in the States.
Really?
I think it's celebrated somewhat there, but probably not to the level of the big parades. But it's certainly a big thing here in the States. And we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Great. Well, in the meantime, I have a question. Now, do you remember last week that we talked about the night blooming cereus?
Right, yes.
Cereus, Cereus.
And that was a new one for me.
Yeah.
Something that you had limited exposure to.
Yeah, exactly. I had never actually seen one blooming. As the name indicates, they only bloom at night. I've seen the actual plants of them years ago, but I've never seen one blooming. So anyway, the person that had emailed in last weekend had asked kind of on the pruning of it. Hers wasn't blooming yet. It was kind of getting a little rangy, and we kind of discussed the pruning on it. But at the end of that discussion, I asked if anyone has a bloom, photos of blooms, or I asked that person if when it does bloom, please share it. Well, anyway, I got an email from Chris who sent a photo of her night blooming cereus.
Okay.
Here's what Chris says. Hello, I've had my plant for about 15 years, and it blooms a couple of times a year.
Oh.
It's amazing to watch the blooms open. They smell incredible. My plant, the last bloom was in December, and there were 11 blooms in 1 week. Each bloom only lasts a night, starts wilting about 12 hours after blooming. It's fascinating to watch them bloom, as you can actually see the flowers open and expand.
Wow.
And so Chris sent a photo here of, you can tell it's getting maybe just towards dawn, or maybe it's early evening, but anyway, it's close to darkness, but a beautiful photo of the night blooming cereus in bloom. I see on that her plant has maybe 5 that are open all at once, and it's a very beautiful kind of white, silvery white flowers.
You know what they look? They look like kind of like fireworks at night. They're
they
kind
do.
of like exploding.
Yeah, I was trying to describe it, rather than like a trumpet-shaped bloom or something. Yeah, it's kind of a fireworks-like shaped, kind of almost an explosion of a flower, kind of like a sparkler. They almost look like a sparkler.
Sparkler's a good one.
On top of that plant. And as she mentions, they smell incredibly.
Which is something, because when we both looked at the picture last week, it's not necessarily a pleasant looking plant.
No, the botanists, when I looked it up, the botanists call it ugly.
Yeah.
And they reserve that term for only a limited number of plants.
Very scientific term.
Rarely have I seen a botanist describe anything as ugly. But wow, I can see why they are, for those that are familiar with the plant, why they'd be popular.
Yeah.
Waiting for that flower to bloom like that. And so that was awesome. Thank you, Chris, for sending that photo in.
She says she's had it for 15 years, right? And
yes.
Last week, I think we were talking that it takes about 3 years to establish before it'll flower.
Exactly.
So it's great that she's had it for long enough that the investment's paid off. She's given it its time. She's done a great job with it, and now gets multiple blooms. That's really fantastic.
Yeah, well worth waiting for.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Chris. And anyone who, if you have a photo of the night blooming cereus, feel free to send us. Or if there's any other comments, questions that you might have, send me an email, donald.kinsler, KINZLER, @ndsu.edu.
But let's get into a little bit more festive, something that's let's get into the green.
Have you ever found a 4-leaf clover?
I've not.
We've had clover in our lawn when I was growing up. Clover used to be considered an elite thing in your lawn. So we were of modest means, but our lawn did have clover in it. And I remember looking through all the little clovers, because typically they have 3 leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you always hear a 4-leaf clover. And so I did a little looking, and they're rare, very rare. 1 in 5,000 approximately would be a 4-leaf. It's a 4-leaf. The 4-leaf version is a mutation. So customarily there are 3, and occasionally you get this mutant that will have 4. So because of the rareness, they're considered very, very lucky to have found it. Oh, by the way, too, you hear the term the luck of the Irish.
Right.
I happened to stumble across the origin of that.
Okay.
And it originated in the United States here, apparently during the gold rush days of the late 1800s. The gold rush days, apparently some of the Irish were very, very fortunate to have struck it rich in silver and gold mines. So then the kind of the phrase, the luck of the Irish. But it at the time was considered maybe a little derogatory because instead of attributing it to their skill in mining
or hard work,
exactly, it was kind of attributed to luck.
They just got lucky.
Yeah, exactly. But the luck of the Irish, you still hear that term, and it's kind of fascinating to see kind of the origin of it. And of course, the Emerald Isle.
Yeah.
I've never been to Ireland, but of course you always hear how green and lush it is. And of course, those of us who enjoy gardening, green and lush is very appealing.
Well, it rains there so much. It is. I've been there, and it is.
Oh, you have been to Ireland?
Yeah, and it is.
Awesome.
It's very, very rainy, depending on where you are. But it can be. I mean, that's what they say a lot is that it's. Well, most of the time it's gray. That's the think out of the outlook is gray and raining. But it is the thing that I was kind of surprised at least especially on the west coast of Ireland, down on Tralee and Galway area, palm trees. Considering that
really?
Palm trees for some reason.
You mean like Florida type palm trees?
Yeah,
really?
Maybe not as tall, but yeah,
I don't picture palm trees in Ireland.
But it doesn't get, it's a fairly temperate climate. They don't often get snow. They can get snow in the winter, but they don't get snow like we do. And just some places, I suppose.
Yeah, because when we talk about some of the lists of plants that are native to Ireland, there are things that, of course, we couldn't begin to grow here in the upper Midwest. So it's interesting. When talking about like 4-leaf clovers, 3-leaf clovers, it's interesting too, the term shamrock.
Oh, yeah.
So I I looked up the derivation of shamrock. Well, of course, the shamrock is oftentimes pictured as either 3 or 4 leaf clover type thing. But the term shamrock apparently derived from an Irish word meaning young clover.
Okay.
So that was the origin of the term shamrock.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun. This old German is kind of learning lots of Irish type stuff. And of course, it's also interesting for anyone who is in 4-H. Of course, the 4-leaf clover is the symbol also of 4-H as well. So kind of there's lots of neat lore. And of course, one thing that maybe wasn't quite so neat was, of course, the Irish potato famine.
Right. Really horrible thing.
A horrible thing. And of course, that occurred from about 1845 to 1860 or so. So it's interesting. I kind of knew a little bit about the potato famine. Of course, you always hear that that's why there were so many Irish that immigrated to the United States, because they needed to leave Ireland because things were so dire.
2 million people left, yeah.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And so when a person kind of does a little bit of research as to what was happening, well, the potato was a huge crop for Ireland, but for eating, for feeding livestock, and as an agronomic field crop. And a reason why it became so popular there to produce was because in a relatively small area, you can get a lot of production out of potatoes. So wonderful food, you could raise on a fairly small farm, you could raise a lot of potatoes. So the area became very dependent on that as a crop. And the potato variety that they grew was basically one variety. And I'd never heard of this one, the Irish lumper.
Right.
Yeah, the Irish lumper was the potato variety. And of course, anytime you're planting a whole lot of just one type of thing, think of elm trees or ash trees, then problems can arise. So in about 1840 something, a fungal disease happened to get from Europe onto the island of Ireland. And that fungal disease, which we know as late blight, potatoes can still be affected by late blight in our area. It's not common, but it's known to be devastating. And so when late blight affected the potatoes, it causes the tubers to rot. That fungus stays in the soil. Of course, there were no fungicides, there were no preventatives. And so it just wiped out potatoes for probably a decade. And it caused such heartache that people starved, people had to leave, and so the Irish potato famine.
About 1 million people died.
Yeah,
like over 1 million people.
Yeah, and so I can see why a person might think, well, how come they concentrated on potatoes? But I've talked on our podcasts. I grow a lot of potatoes. We depend a lot on potatoes ourselves. We eat a lot of potatoes. They store well. So the people in Ireland grow a lot of, you get a lot of food off of a small area, and it stores very well too. So I can see why they raised a lot of potatoes and how they could become dependent on that crop.
And there's also some, we're not a political show in this, but there were some political things there where the Irish people, they were poor, but the landowners were a lot of times were English, and so there was a pressure on the people to grow the things that they could grow the most of and do the best with, and that was the potato. And so they were limited, and they weren't necessarily the potato was introduced to Ireland. I don't think it was necessarily native there.
Exactly, because it is a native to South America.
Yeah, so it was something that they were learning.
And of course, if you are just a tenant on a farm, and then maybe you produce and maybe you produce the crop that the landowner told you to produce. And there's a lot of history in that Irish potato famine. But talk about an event that really changed the course of history.
Yeah,
for Ireland.
Like I said, 2 million, over 2 million people relocated, left. I think they left the country about half the population. The population dwindled by about a half in about maybe a half a century or so, or went from about 8 million to 4 million. Really, just dropped, just destroyed the country and the economy, and that really took a foothold really for about the next. Till about the middle of the 1900s almost.
Exactly.
It took a long time to come back.
One bright spot in all that was the United States got a lot of Irish people.
Right. And so we got St. Patrick's Day out of that.
That is awesome. Now, with you being half Irish, in addition to potatoes and things, are there other like vegetables and foods that maybe were family type things for you?
I will say this as somebody who's I celebrate a lot of my Irish heritage, and having been to Ireland, I will say the Irish are not necessarily known for gourmet. There is fine dining in Ireland too, but the stuff that we celebrate it's stuff that kind of comes out of poverty. The food that kind of comes out of poverty. As with a lot of other cultures, the food that lasts is the food that you were able to make it by on. Sure. The sustenance, really.
Right.
It's not the
Very
celebrating true. Of, so, like for St. Patrick's Day, people will eat corn here in America. We'll eat corned beef and cabbage. Well, that's the Irish couldn't afford beef. The only the very, very well off could afford that. So one of the big things that was popular for Irish eating is a thing called colcannon, a dish called colcannon, which is boiled mashed potatoes mixed with cabbage, and then what they would call bacon, but what we would call more ham, but in chunks of cabbage and chunks of ham mixed in with that. But cabbage really became after the potato famine became kind of they had to pivot to something else. So cabbage was something that again could be grown for cheap, could be stored maybe for a little bit. It became the popular food to the point where I think I saw one study thought that the average Irish person was eating about 60 pounds of cabbage a year. That's a lot of cabbage.
That's a lot of cabbage. Now it's interesting. Of course, besides making me hungry, you bring up a good point about kind of the sustenance type food.
Yeah.
And, I know my German ancestors that immigrated here, they weren't people of means.
Right.
So, I never thought about that much. But, I'm sure
grew sauerkraut is something.
Yeah, they grew and ate foods that would sustain them, would store well. Sauerkraut.
Right? Sauerkraut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they maybe didn't have the time or means for fine dining. So it's interesting. Hearty food.
Those things that are kind of passed down. I mean, lutefisk. Lefse is basically potatoes. So these things that are then they're kind of passed down. That does become what we celebrate out of a tradition, and I think that's probably true for so many other cultures, not just European cultures too. But that the foods, and then they develop over time, so that maybe they become a little bit more. They're adapted, and they become something else, like corned beef and cabbage.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, when you kind of consider or do a little search on other type of food that were very popular with the Irish. Carrots, because again, carrots you can put in with other types of things, and they store very well. Leeks.
Oh yeah,
a leek. I've never grown leek. That's on my bucket list.
Really?
I gotta try to. I need to grow leeks.
Leeks are delicious. Yeah.
And turnips.
Yep.
The Irish were into turnips in addition to potatoes and cabbage. But I think when we did our Halloween show, I think we talked about that before pumpkins. Turnips were used
for jack-o'-lanterns.
Yeah, and so
I couldn't remember if it was turnips or rutabagas, but I think you're right. I think it's turnips.
Yeah, one of the two.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of fascinating to
the root vegetables really were, and too. It depends on where you are in Ireland because some of it's very hilly and rocky, so you may not have big plots of land to farm on. Some of it is very good farmland, but So depending on where you are, those things, and so maybe a lot of root vegetables really does work. So let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about maybe keeping on the St. Patrick's Day theme, but some of the other plants and vegetables and flowers that are grown in Ireland.
Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
All right, we're back this week, and we thought that we would celebrate the greenest holiday, St. Patrick's Day, as this is a gardening podcast.
I even wore green today to put me in the mood.
Yes, you did. You did. It has nothing to do with NDSU, but rather.
Right, correct.
But so yeah, and here we are. It is. It's spring. We're feeling more spring, so it's nice to. St. Patrick's Day just really does help you. It's kind of, I think here in town, they call the St. Patrick's Day parade the kickoff, the official kickoff to spring.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of
it's a great kickoff.
Yeah, you get to mid-March and you're seeing more and more of spring. You're thinking more and more spring. And so, but we were going to talk a little bit about while we think of some Irish foods, but also like the plants that are grown in Ireland, some of the things, and we'll see if some of that has translated over to America as far as things that we celebrate with and around St. Patrick's Day.
Right. And of course, one of the reasons why shamrock, the shamrock or the clover, 4-leaf clover, 3-leaf has become kind of one of the symbols of Ireland and the Irish is because they grow lots of white clover and a few other species of clover in Ireland. So it's native to that area. And also bog myrtle. Now, a lot of these plants, I'm not overly familiar with because, some of these are quite a few hardiness zones warmer than what we would grow. So now, did you see any of the Irish bog lands at all when you were there?
I was mostly on the coast.
And so bog myrtle would be one of the plants native to that. And a sea pink, it's called, found on Irish coastal cliffs. Now, sea pink, another name for that is the perennial armeria, and that we can actually grow here. Other types of plants that they're known for in Ireland, there are wild roses growing kind of in native hedgerows.
Yeah, I was in Tralee, and they called Tralee the rose capital of Ireland. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Heather is another one that's found in Irish bogs and moorlands. Heather, sometimes you see heather in bouquets, flower bouquets. Be kind of fun to see heather growing naturally.
Well, and I think the local, the Fargo Moorhead based drum and bagpipe band, I think is called something like the Heather and Heather and Thistle, something like that.
I think you might be right.
Yeah, I think it is. So
yeah, sure. So named after one of the native plants, foxglove.
Oh, sure.
The foxglove, which is a perennial or biennial that we can grow in our perennial gardens. That's native to Ireland. And the name, it does have some folklore to it. Fairy gloves, foxglove, fairy gloves is what it's sometimes called. Heath in the Irish, some of the Irish countryside, heath is grown. For trees, they have some oaks. One particular variety is actually called Irish oak, which is a native one. Yew, Y-E-W.
Okay.
Yews grow there. And ash trees, holly, the evergreen holly. And rowan, the tree rowan, R-O-W-A-N. And I've heard of that before because rowan is what the Europeans and the Irish call mountain ash.
Okay.
Now, mountain ash trees we grow here.
Okay.
And so kind of interesting, this same tree, but different name there. That's where botanical names are so important, because if you referred to something as sorbaria, the botanical name. We can converse, whether it's a rowan or mountain ash. If we talk about a sorbaria, we know, oh, we're both talking the same thing. Well, anyway, in folklore, rowan trees were important to be planted by Irish homes, kind of by the front door, because it was thought to protect against witches.
Oh, okay.
So if witches are a concern to you, you might want to plant a rowan or a mountain ash by your front door. And so kind of interesting. A shrub that's fascinating that's native to Ireland is the gorse bush.
Gorse bush.
Gorse bush. Now, I had to, in the back of my mind, where have I heard of the gorse bush? And it occurred to me, Winnie the Pooh.
Oh.
When Winnie the Pooh falls out of the tree, he's up there looking for honey.
Yeah.
He falls out of the tree. He lands in the gorse bush.
Oh.
And so several times throughout Winnie the Pooh, you'll hear him referred to gorse bushes. I think Pooh and Piglet were trying to get to, I'm sure, some more honey, but in another instance, a gorse bush was in the way. And they're a thorny bush. They actually have yellow flowers, but they're dense. They're actually an evergreen, not a needle-type evergreen, but I think a leafy type where they keep their little leaves on all year long. So anyway, the gorse bush from Winnie the Pooh fame. Hawthorn, we grow hawthorn here as well. A shrub called bilberry. I've never heard of that. And blackthorn grows in kind of a hedgerow. Blackthorn, I'm not familiar with that either. And so those were a couple of trees. Some that are familiar with us that we also grow: birch trees, and Scotch pine.
Okay.
Grown here. It's one of our winter hardy pines. And some wildflowers: primroses, bluebells, meadowsweet. One common knapweed. Some types of wildflowers, it's debatable whether they're weeds or whether they're a wildflower. Because many weeds have flowers, and they're certainly wild. Well, anyway, knapweed is one. Fascinating one I saw on the list: bird's foot trefoil. Now, bird's foot trefoil. Have you noticed in July and August in our area? I see a lot of it in Fargo and surrounding areas. On boulevards and kind of unkempt lots, where they maybe mow it, but, there's not a whole lot going on the lots. But when the grass starts to diminish a little bit from the heat and the dryness, the grass starts to get a little brown, there are these circular green, low-growing patches with beautiful yellow flowers. Okay, so now this next summer, middle of summer, if grass starts getting a little brownish, as you drive up and down our communities, common in ditches as well, you'll see these low-growing, beautiful green-leaved clumps with yellow flowers, and that's bird's foot trefoil.
Okay.
So that grows in Ireland, and it grows here. Now, it escapes easily. It was brought to this country as a forage for livestock, and it has done quite well for itself. It has become kind of a weedy escape. But in the right place, it's a good livestock forage. And let's see, do I have anything else on my list of plants? Alder, which is kind of a shrubby, small tree, large shrub. And so the point being that they are certainly a warmer climate than we are in the upper Midwest, and so they can grow some things that we can't. But it was fun to see that there are items that are comparable.
Yeah, I think they're zone 8 and 9 is what I just looked up.
Oh, sure. That's interesting. And of course, with their maritime type climate, being an island in the ocean. So someday I'm going to get there. It'd be fun for me to kind of look and see all the greenery and to study the plants. And it's kind of fun. Now, someday if I get to Ireland, I'll be looking for bird's foot trefoil. Yes. And this summer you'll have to notice that.
I'll take a look at it when I'm driving around. Like you said, look at the boulevards.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, well, this has been good discussion.
Yeah, this is fun.
It's put me in the mood for greenery.
Well, and again, it just gets us thinking a little bit more of spring and gets us, this has been a good, fun show. Well, if people have questions for you about anything, about odd plants, about maybe we do a whole show on German plants or something like that too. But if people have any questions for you about anything, what's the best way to reach you?
Yes, send me an email, donald.kinsler, KINZLER, at ndsu.edu. And if any of you have any Irish heritage, either plants or anything, traditions that you have, feel free to let us know. It's always fun to hear.
If you're making an Irish bouquet, I'd love to see what people put in. If people are making bouquets for St. Patrick's Day, I'd love to know what goes in that.
Exactly. When that comes to mind, around St. Patrick's Day, green carnations.
Oh, sure.
Carnations, green is not natural on a carnation, but you can dye carnations.
Yep.
And so it'll be interesting. And then, of course, put a little heather with that, and you'd have an Irish bouquet.
It would be a really nice thing.
It would.
All right. Well, Don, thanks again for coming in this week.
Well, thank you, John, and everyone. Have a happy St. Patrick's Day.